Welcome to Harvest Mission Community Church. You are listening to one of our sermons.
Now, as I was pondering, praying, and preparing for today's sermon, the Lord impressed a very familiar passage from the book of Luke, chapter 8, verses 22 to 25. Luke, chapter 8, verses 22 to 25 on my heart. I guess many of you all know the story of Jesus. This is the story of when Jesus goes and calms the storm. As I studied deeper, the Lord gave me some incredible lessons and insights that I would love to share with you today. I hope this will not only draw us closer to Lord Jesus, but this will give us a new meaning to us about who Jesus is and some of his attributes and character that will help us to understand the plan and purposes that he has for us. So please allow me to read the passage to you. Now, as I read, may I ask you to imagine that you are one of Jesus' disciples. So let me read it to you. One day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake, so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we are going to get drowned." We got up and rebuked the wind and raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." So this is the passage. This is the background scenario that's going on. And if you look with me to verse 22, we see that very simple. Jesus calls his disciples, asks them to jump on a boat, and where is he going? To the other side of the lake. So, what do we learn from this? What is the first lesson do we learn from this scenario? We learn that when Jesus calls his disciples, he always has a plan for us. In this context, Jesus called his disciples to go to the other side of the lake. That was the plan. Okay? It's very simple. Now, many of you all know that I was in India. Jesus brought me to many other places like Thailand, Nepal, Cambodia, and then I came to Hong Kong. And I believe many of you all are also coming from different nations, right? Can you raise your hand who are in Hong Kong from outside Hong Kong? Wow. So it's not just me. So what we see here, how Jesus brought you all from the other side of the ocean, just like Jesus wanted to take the disciples to the other side of the lake, because he had a great plan for his disciples. And if you fast forward to today, he has a great plan for you and I, bringing us out of our context to a new place. So just in case, if you are here in Hong Kong, you are missing home, or you are having homesick, I want to encourage you that Jesus has brought you here with a purpose. Just in case you are thinking, why or what on earth am I doing in Hong Kong? I want to remind you and encourage you, and I want you to imagine that God has a great plan for us, a plan to prosper us and not to harm us, and give us a future and hope. Thank you, brother. He's a good Bible reader, I can see. So, lesson number 1 is God has a good plan for us. Now, in the same verse, if you follow with me, what did Jesus say? Jesus says, guys, you go ahead and I will come and meet you in the evening. Is that what he says? No, absolutely not. He says, let us go to the other side of the lake. Meaning, when Jesus has a plan for you and I, not only he has a good plan, but his presence is with us. Isn't that an incredible promise? That not only he has a plan, but his presence is with us. The Bible says that he will never leave us. He will never forsake us. He will even go with us to the ends of the age. What a fascinating promise to hold on to. So Jesus not only has a plan, but his presence is always with us. So just in case you are in Hong Kong, if you are feeling lonely like I felt when I first came to Hong Kong, I was so lonely, But I was not a Christian then. When I became a Christian, I found that Jesus was always with me. And I want to encourage you all that when you are feeling lonely or you are feeling lost, remember that you are not alone in this journey. Jesus is with you. Now, speaking of plan and his presence in our life, I would like to share with you a short and a true story of a lady called Maya. As you can see, Maya is a beautiful lady. When she was in her mother's womb in India, in those days, this was back in 50s, the whole family was expecting to see a son. And in those days, there was no, those machines where you can find out whether it's a boy or a girl. In those days, there wasn't. So the whole family didn't know. But they were expecting, because they were very strong Hindu. They were even offering and praying and fasting to Lord Shiva, who is the god of giving birth to children. So everybody was praying to have a son. But when Maya was born, when she was delivered, the father, the whole family came running into the room and found that it was a baby girl. And Maya's father, who was so excited and imagining in his mind that it will be a boy, he came and saw a baby girl. He was so disappointed. And you know what he did? Instead of picking Maya into his loving hand, he spit at her and said, I wish you were not born. And he left angrily the room. So Maya grew up with a lot of rejection, shame, and fear. The father hardly talked to Maya, And this is not the end of the story, because she was so beautiful, and many of your ladies here know that beauty sometimes can be a blessing, but beauty can also be a curse. For poor Maya, it turned into a curse. She became a victim of many predators, men, ungodly men, lustful men. And by the age of 14, she actually was molested and made pregnant by a man who was her uncle. So sad. And You know, in such situations in India, they usually kick the woman out because they brought shame to the family. So Maya was kicked out of the family. Long story short, because she was beautiful, some men picked her up, and she finally got married to a man who loved her and became her future husband. But the marriage didn't work out somehow. So she kept jumping from one man to the other, because those days in India, women never got educated. You know, that's why it was a curse to the family when a daughter is born. Because when a daughter is born, it brings poverty to the family. Because when she's getting married, as a bride's family, they have to give a lot of money. It's called dowry system. Many of you all must have heard. They have to give a lot of money, properties, ornaments to the groom's family. So when a daughter is born, it's a curse. The whole family becomes poor during the marriage. So going back to Maya's story, she kept jumping from one man to the other. I am glad that she never became a prostitute, or usually many women like her situation, they will commit, they will just finish their life. They will commit suicide. Anyways, so Maya moved on, and in the long run, she had a son who went overseas and somehow became a Christian. And when he became a Christian, after many years, he was convicted to go back and meet his mother. And he shared about Jesus into Maya's life, giving her a Bible, saying, "This man, Jesus, will never leave you, never forsake you, like all the men has done in your life." And that's how Maya received Jesus and became a Christian. And the rest is history. Maya is such a dedicated Christian now. And I'm telling you this story because I had the privilege to baptize Maya in our church in Hong Kong. And by the way, just to keep it between us, Maya is none other than but my mother, who lives with us now. We live in Muivo. Please feel free, and we'll be happy to come and visit my mother. She is with the Bible the whole day. Sometimes she brings shame to me because I am a missionary, right? I should be reading my Bible the whole time, but she is the one who is always praying and reading, and I can guarantee you she is praying for me now with the Bible in her hand. Why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you because God had a plan, a beautiful plan for Maya, even in her brokenness. And God's presence was with her the whole time. So, any of y'all who are here, if you are feeling broken or lonely or some disappointment, I want to challenge, I want to encourage, and I want to remind again and again that God has a good plan for you, and His presence is with you. Now, moving on, what do we see? We see that Jesus calls His disciples, and they sail on the boat. And what happens? The boat was hit by a strong storm. And what was Jesus doing? Jesus was sleeping. What was the disciples doing? They were panicking here and there. They were saying, "Master, Master, we are going to get drowned. Do something about it. Otherwise, we will die." There was a chaotic scenario going on, but Jesus was lying there. You know, Jesus is God, right? Don't you think that Jesus knows that there is a storm? But He was cool and calm, lying down. So what lesson do we learn from this? we learn that although Jesus has a beautiful plan for us, although Jesus' presence is with us, that never guarantees that life is going to be a bed of roses. We always will face storm. Either we will face storm today or the storm is on the way. I always tell people storms in life is like our hair or like our nails. You know, you cut it and it comes back. You cut it, it grows back. So what we learn here is storm is part and parcel of our Christian journey. But what Jesus is trying to say that in storms in our life, we should not panic. We should be patient. We should persevere the storm, knowing that it will be over sooner or later. We should not worry about our problems. We have to be patient like Jesus was. And you know, one uniqueness and one unique thing about Jesus I love, and that's one of the reasons why I became a Christian, is because Jesus always plays, whatever he teaches, he plays it as a role model. In other words, he practices what he preaches. You know, when I grew up as a Hindu, you know, Hinduism has 3.3 million gods and goddesses. And if you look into the history, I used to follow, and I was devoted follower of Lord Krishna. Now, Lord Krishna is called the God of love in Hinduism. You guys are very intelligent. You are all modern young people. You can just check now of Lord Krishna, and you will see Lord Krishna is standing with 100 gopinis. Gopinis meaning mistresses. So his love, his expression of love is different. When I became a Christian, when I encountered Christ, I was blown away by his love. You know, the sacrificial love, a love that demonstrates sacrifice, a love that demonstrates so much power that he died for me. Not only he died for me, he died for a sinner like me. I had a very sinful life. I can't tell you everything in one sharing. If you really want to hear my story, you have to take me out to Starbucks. It's a very expensive story of Jesus in my life. So anyways, I was a very sinful man, you know, and when I encountered Jesus, I found that Jesus not only died for me, but he died for a sinner like me. And that blew my mind. Blew my mind to a point that I was on my knees and I was crying that how could you die for me? And that was the turning point of my life from believing in Krishna or following Krishna to believe in Christ. Because when I looked at Krishna's life, it didn't make sense to me. But when I looked into Jesus' life, it made so much sense to me. He practiced what he preached. So going back to this passage, when they were hit by a storm, he was chilling. The young people likes this word, yeah? My son loves it. Yeah, even yesterday he wrote to me, Baba, can I chill a bit with my friends? I don't know. I said, okay, but I still don't know what's chilling. Anyway, Jesus was calm and cool. You know, this cool is another word that young people loves. So Jesus was calm and cool, whereas his disciples were panicking. Master, Master, they were making all this chaotic scenario. Okay? So what we learn here is when Jesus is in our life, he never guarantees. In fact, in John 16:33, he clearly says, right, that there will be troubles in our life. There will be troubles, there will be trials, there will be tests, there will be tribulations, there will be tensions when we follow Jesus. But he will overcome it. That's what he's meaning to say. Like, why are you panicking? Why can't you wait? Why can't you be a bit patient? Why can't you persevere? So this is the lesson, what he is teaching to you and I, that there will be storms in our lives, but we have to be patient and persevere till the storm is over, because it will be over through the power of Jesus. Now you might say, Brother Kaushic, it's very easier to say than done. And I agree with you. I agree with you. Some things, certain worries, certain storms in our life can be so dramatic, can be so deep. You know, it's not easy to just be calm. As I said, I grew up in India in a very strong Hindu family, and my mother was Maya. And you know, Maya's life was one man after the other. And being the only son, it broke my heart when my mom and dad got separated. Because in India, son is supposed to be a very valued person, you know, and I was. My mom loved me, but when she left my daddy and married another person, my heart was broken, and I had to leave home. Living home, I was only 19 years old. I couldn't go to university like you guys are privileged to, although I wanted to, but I couldn't afford. But I had to survive. So what did I do? I went to a culinary school because I thought if I know cooking, I will always have food and money. It was a street smart thinking, you know. That's why two of my sons are actually chefs. So anyways, I went to a cooking school and I took culinary as my career, and I became a chef, and I've been working in different nations until I ended up in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, I had a very good job. I had money, I was young, but my life was very lonely. Like many of you all, you know, Hong Kong is a very slippery place for lonely people. So I started drinking a lot. My friend became Carlsberg, who was my best friend, you know. From morning to evening, I used to have my Carlsberg. Even at workplace, I used to go take a break and drink. So my life was falling apart, you know, until one day, Sunday morning, I was walking down Chim Sa Choy. You know Chim Sa Choy? I was walking down the road, passing Chungking Mansion and going towards Jordan, and I found a beautiful church called St. Andrew's Church. How many of you all know St. Andrew's? In those days, this is back in 2000, it was St. Andrew's Church, and I saw, watching Bollywood movies, I thought church is a good place. I had my beer, you know, it looks beautiful, it has a good garden, it's a good place to go and chill, you know. So I know. So I went in, and indeed, it was a beautiful Anglican church. It had a beautiful garden. I had my cans of beer. I was drinking. Listen, those days we had Walkman, yeah? I was listening to music, and I fall asleep. You know, I was smashed, okay? Now, when my eyes opened, I saw beautiful music. And you know, I come from a city called Calcutta. We are Bengalis. You'll never see a Bengali in Hong Kong, you know. Bengalis are not migrating people like Punjabis or other part of India. We stay to our state. We love to. That's why I'm the black sheep of my community. Not only I ran away, but I also became a Christian. And then instead of marrying a Bengali, I married a Filipino. So they hate me. You know? Anyways, so when I opened my eyes, I saw beautiful music coming, and all Bengalis love music. You know, in Bollywood, most of the singers are Bengalis. I was very inquisitive to see what's going on. I thought there was some kind of jamming going on because I've never been to a church before. I went to temples. When I went in, I saw young people like you in front. They are waving their hands and worshiping God. I sat at the end of the pew, you know, because I was smelling beer. I was a bit ashamed, but I was so touched by the way of worship the young people were doing because I've never done worship in that way. I followed Krishna, remember? And I was devoted. But when my mother left me, I stopped believing in God. I thought, how can Krishna be so cruel to take my mom from my life? So when I saw young people like you all, they were waving their hands, I felt this is the way I want to worship my God. I was spiritual, but I was lost. I took a break from God. But that day, that evening, the Spirit touched my heart. And you know what? The pastor or the vicar, he came, and the title of the message was Friendship. And he challenged the congregation that Jesus is not only going to be your friend on earth, but also in eternity. And that came like a spear in my heart because I told you I was a very lonely friend. My best friend was Carlsberg, and I thought, who is this friend who will not only be my friend here, but even when I die? So that was the beginning point of my journey. So when I was walking, I left early before the crowd dispersed, you know. I left early. As I was walking, there was a welcome table, a lot of leaflets. I took a leaflet which was the book of John, and that was what the beginning of my faith journey. As I read the book of John, I saw the supremacy of Christ, that he is the only Lord and Savior. And the more I compared, I took about 2-3 years just to compare between Krishna and Christ. And one day, like I said, I was on my knees crying, thinking, how could a man die for me, not only me, but for my sin, and give me a second chance? I found a little bit of my purpose in life. And that was the beginning. Long story short, as I continued, I joined Alpha. Many of you all know Alpha. It's a discipleship course. I joined Alpha. I began to grow in my discipleship. And then I thought, because Jesus died for me, this is also part of our culture. You know, if they give something to me, I have to give back something. I thought, if Jesus can give his life for me, I have to give back something. So that's when I started volunteering in Chongqing Mansion. And I started helping. The church had a ministry center, a drop-in center where people from all over the world came. And I speak 5 languages, South Asian languages, which was very helpful in the ministry. And that's how I started my ministry. And Angel, can you please play the video, please? Please watch this. It's okay. Can I sit next to you? How did it all start? I remember back in 1994, Inner City Ministry was established in Chongqing Mansion with a drop-in center where people mostly from the South Asian and African countries used to come and drop by and share their stories, share their hearts. When I joined, I remember not having any seminary education or much of a missions background because I was very new Christian converted from a Hindu background. Um, I didn't have much knowledge what to do. Neither did I have any job role or job descriptions. So coming from a chef's background, all I did was I started cooking, and that grew up into a feeding ministry in the coming years.
My name is Mubarak Ahmad. I am from Pakistan. I come Hong Kong because I am in trouble in my country. I am a refugee. I will go waiting for going to France. Nihari, today I will cook 1 hour. I will make gravy, basic gravy, then put inside nihari masala and fry, boil the lamb leg and put inside the meat.
Hello, my name is Sunita. I'm from Nepal. I like to be safe and it's my career. Start appetizer and tandoori chicken with mint sauce. Main course, chicken biryani with vegetable raita. For dessert, this is gajar ka halwa.
Okay, gajar, which means carrot pudding.
Yeah.
Every day morning, at least 1 hour to 1.5 hour, we have a time which we call it share and prayer. And this is where, no matter where the training comes from, what background or what religion, maybe Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, we have a wonderful time of just sharing our hearts. We try to bond together as a family. Thank you, Angel, for playing that. I had to show this video because everybody feels hungry, you know. Next time, I promise I'll bring some food, taking permission from the leaders. So this was a ministry that I started. I gave my cooking skills to the poor and needy, underprivileged people in Hong Kong, mainly people from India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and I speak most of these languages, which was growing. It was a, how do I say in English? It was a very meaningful ministry in Hong Kong, but you know what happened? I was ministering to a lot of Muslims here, and many of them, I never converted, but many of them started coming to church with me in St. Andrews, and many of them became Christians, and this really disturbed some of the Muslim leaders, and they started framing me. And one day, when I was in China, I used to go back and forth in China because the equipments and the ingredients are so cheap, you know. When I was in China, guess what? I was framed and I was arrested in China and I was put into prison. My dear friends, I pray, and I prayed, you know. When I was in China in prison, I was on my knees. I was so broken that I cried out to God that no one should come to prison. It's so painful, and the suffering was so immense, you know. When I was in prison, I was completely lost, and I felt like this is not making any sense. And by the way, you know, prison in Hong Kong and prison in China are two different stories, okay? I don't want to tell too much, but in Chinese prison, it's very difficult, you know? I can tell you more if you take me to Starbucks, what happened. But anyways, long story short, that was the most, how do I say, the most suffering time of my life, because in China, when you are arrested, from that day onwards, they disconnect you to the world. So my wife, my poor wife, didn't even know. All our 5 children didn't know where Baba was. Baba means father. So I was disconnected, and it was chaotic, especially for her being outside. And it was not making sense to me, thinking, what kind of God is this, I was doing Bible studies with them. I was bringing them to our fellowship. And here I am in prison, suffering with Christ. I was so broken. When my mother left me, I survived. But when I was put in prison, it was not making any sense to me, my faith journey. So I even started thinking that when I go out of prison, I will be a good man. No more of spiritual things in my life. But you know what? One day while I was sleeping, Jesus came into my dream. And he literally looked at me face to face, saying, Kaushic, look at me. Who put me on the cross? Who put me on the cross? It's my people, the people whom I loved so much. They put me on the cross. And that kind of changed my whole perspective of the journey with Jesus. That was my cross experience. And then, before he left, he said, I will release you from this prison. That was a promise I was holding. You know what? This will scare you. I was sentenced for 10 years, but within 10 months, the Lord took me out of prison. Because the police from China, they found out my background in Hong Kong. They knew that I was a clean person. And of course, I had many influential friends in Hong Kong who recommended, and I was released. Why am I telling you this story? Because there will be storms in our life. And in this storm, we should not panic. We should be patient. And that's the lesson I learned when I was in prison, when Jesus told me and promised me that I will rescue you. And that was the day. This was about 3 weeks later, when I was not finding any meaning. And then I realized that since I am in prison, Jesus must have a purpose. So I will continue to serve him. And I started serving him. And you might be saying, how could you serve? Because you don't know the language. And my friends, in certain ministry, and when you're loving people, sometimes you don't need the language. They are watching you. They are reading you. So every day, 6 in the evening, I used to sit down and to overcome my suffering, overcome my pain, I used to start singing. And one of my most favorite songs was Psalms 1:1. I lift my eyes up to the mountain. I will sit and I will sing. I lift my eyes up unto the mountain. Where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. And all the Chinese, they would sit around me and they would go, la, 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 la. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you don't need language. All you need is your love. All you need is to find your purpose. When I was in prison, I told you, it was not making sense to me. But when Jesus met me in my dream and said, look at me, who put me on the cross, I understood that the journey will not be a smooth journey. There will be some rough patches. There will be strong storms coming in our life. So to finish, my friends, I want to tell you and I want to remind you that in every storm in our lives, Jesus has a purpose. In every storm in our life, Jesus has a purpose. And I have a list of purposes that I can tell you, and that might take another hour, but I will just highlight two of them. I hope this makes sense to you. And one of the purposes is He will exhibit His power. He will exhibit His power. And I'm not making this out. My friends, we just read in the passage that while the disciples were panicking, Master, Master, what's going to happen to us? What was Jesus doing? He was lying down, but then He woke up and He rebuked the winds and the waves. And what happened? It calmed down. That's the power I'm talking about. He stood up and rebuked, like boom, and everything calmed down. He exhibited His power. But do you remember what was the next thing He told His disciples? Right after showing His power, He said, "Where is your faith? Where is your faith?" Friends, I want to challenge you today. I want to encourage you that there will be storm in our lives. I hate to tell this. Sometimes I tell people, you want to see Jesus' power? Pray for a storm in your life, and you will see His power. I saw that when I was in prison. I just told you the story. 10 years came down to 10 months. Isn't that Jesus' power? I was already preparing, I hope you guys never go to prison, but when you go to prison, you become practical. I was already preparing, like, at least 5 years I will be here, Mentally, you start preparing. You start cutting all the dates in the calendar. So I was preparing already 5 years, but 10 months, He took me out. Why? Because He wanted to exhibit His power. But He asked me, would you still be with me? That's why I'm here today, my friends. I told you I almost gave up on Jesus. I thought I will go back and I will just be a good man. I don't have to go to temple. I don't have to go to church to be a good man. That was my decision. But when I met Jesus and His power, that's why I'm coming here, not to testify my story, but testify His power in my life. But we as Christians, we also have a part to play. What is our part? What is our part? We have to practice our faith. We have to practice our faith. Okay? So let's do this together. When Jesus called His disciples like you and me, He has a plan. Not only He has a plan, His presence is with us. And because He has a good plan and His presence is with us, does not mean that we are going to live a bed of roses. We will face storm, and during those storms, we should not panic, but we should be patient and persevere the storm to go. And my dear friends, in every storm, I want to remind you to imagine. I want to remind you to imagine that Jesus will exhibit His power. But we also have a part to play. What is our part? We have to practice our faith. With this, I'm going to close with a very interesting story that happened. I have 300 stories because I was in prison for 300 days. Every day there was a story. So if you want to hear them, you know what to do, right? You have to take me 300 times, but I will lift up one beautiful story that happened. Remember, I used to sing that song, my favorite song, I Lift My Eyes Up, and Mungo was from Mongolia. In China, they don't call you by name in prison. He loved me somehow. He became like my disciple. Although he had more bad English than me, very broken English. But he loved this song. He will hum it all the time in the prison. One day he came and sat beside me and asked, brother, song meaning. He wanted to know the meaning of this song. I said, Mungo, this song means God created everything. God created you, God created me. Everything you see, God has created. But he got a bit disturbed. He looked at me in a very angry emotion, and I got a bit scared because he had death sentence. He had death sentence, and in prison, death sentence people are the most dangerous people because they can kill you. They are dying anyways, or they can do anything because in their mind they know that they are dying. So I had to be very careful, right? So when I said, God made everything, He made you, He made me, he looked at me and said, no, I don't believe you. God didn't make everything. Everything is made in China. Believe me, that was the first time I laughed in my prison days. The other times, I used to cry. I used to splash water because the tough guys wouldn't let you cry. They would say, even the walls will not hear you. Why are you crying? And they will punch you. Yeah, so Mungo told me and made me happy. So God has a purpose in our life. Friends, I just want to remind you, I just want to encourage you, and I just want you to imagine, just in case you are thinking, what's the purpose of my life? Why am I in Hong Kong? What on earth am I doing? What's the future look like? Sometimes we don't know. We just have to practice our faith, which is called one step, one day at a time with Jesus. I even tell my children, moment by moment with Jesus.
Thank you for listening to the Harvest Mission Community Church podcast. For more information, visit our website at hongkong.hmcc.net.